Hornby's latest Railroad Plus Class 47 in the Cullis Rail livery is now in the shops. With my interest in this livery and curiosity as to whether the Railroad Plus branding gives you anything, it's time to take a closer look. Hi, thanks for joining today's review. We'll kick off with a brief unboxing, and after that we'll actually take a look inside the model as part of our upgrading to DCC support. We'll then do our usual close-up and 360 view, followed by a short running session, and then get into the summary, scoring and final recommendation. Okay, let's get underway. Okay, so we're going to do the unboxing for this Railroad Plus model. It's the R30045, which is a class 47 in the Cullis livery, City of Truro 47749. So I purchased this from Hatton's. It came in this outside box, which is good. You may not get this always, I guess, but this was nice to see this outer box when you're getting it through the post, which gives a bit of extra protection. So we'll open this up. And again, we've got a protective flap in there, so we'll pop this guy out. Okay, so let's get looking at the model itself. So I think on first viewing, this is a nice livery. I do like the Cullis rail freight livery. I haven't got any models in this livery at the moment, so this is my first. I have been looking at getting some models. I've been looking at, for example, the Class 56, for example, in this particular livery from Cavalax. But I haven't seen any 47s in this livery, and this was the first. So, and I've never had a, I suppose, one of these enhanced railroad models. So we're going to discover what extra it gives you. So it comes in the standard railroad box, DCC, 8-pin DCC ready. Okay, so we're going to open this up, and I've got my trusty butter knife. People have asked me actually what do I use to open the boxes to protect the flaps, and I use the soft side of one of these knives. You can also use a letter opener, but letter opener could be a little bit maybe a bit sharp. So let's get this guy open, and we preserve the little flaps on the opening there. So let's get this guy out. Standard packaging, so there's nothing outrageous to talk about here from a railroad perspective. So let's just open this guy up. Okay. All right. Now it does feel quite light in the hand, so we will weigh it, of course, and that's probably not surprising for a railroad model. So let's take him out. Actually, he really does feel very light. You do get these etched nameplates, so it's one of the claims to fame of the enhanced model. This is just, it's ridiculously light, actually. Maybe I'm imagining it, but we will weigh it. I guess the first impression is that this livery looks pretty good. There's a little bit of a scuff mark there, but overall the livery looks good. We'll be able to clean that off. And it is in this very attractive Cullis Rail livery. As I say, I do tend to like this livery. So we've got the wipers are kind of molded, looks like they're part of the main molding. I'm not sure if this has any sort of lighting functions or not. We will be opening the model, of course. I will be adding sound to this, DCC sound. I'm going to use a Soundtracks decoder with a converter. I don't have any Class 47 TTS decoders at this point in time, and I think you'll find it very difficult to get them. So this looks pretty good from just a visual perspective. I mean, it is basic. I guess the underbody does look a little bit more decorated. There is a levels of detail. We will do the usual close-up here. You know, the bogies look pretty good. It's all molded detail, called out with a little bit of added paint. Some added labeling there on the underbody, which, you know, it looks good. It kind of hits the mark for a model of this caliber. Overall, the livery looks like a decent application of the livery, and you know, you are looking at effectively a molded model. Everything on this is pretty well molded. from a detail perspective. You're not looking at any really added detail. All the bars, handrails, etc. are all they're all molded. There's fixed buffers, obviously, and fixed wipers are just part of the mold. And there's a kind of a very basic cab in there. There's no driver in there. I might see about adding a driver actually. We're doing this. So it is basic. It's I suppose it is railroad level, or maybe it's a little bit notch above the normal railroad level, which is kind of what it's been marketed as. The roof is pretty basic. The fans are just molded, as you can see. There's no real actual fan in there. Nothing's going to move. There's a chimney in there, which you can kind of see into the body, which is kind of interesting. So we will open this up and we will add the decoder, and then we'll get her out on the track. But I will do the close-up on this as well, so you can get a closer look at it. I think it's not a bad-looking model. It's certainly passable, but it is basic and it is extremely light, and hence I do have fears for when I put on the track. I'm going to be running this, which is, you might as well give a good test, so I'm going to be running it with some of the Acura scale wagons, so we'll see how that fares out. Okay, so I think the next thing we're going to do is open this model up and take a look at on the inside, and then we'll go to the next level of the review. Okay. Okay, we're going to look at removing the body. So it talks about actually taking out the buffers, which is kind of interesting. Never seen that before. So we will look to do that and then remove the body from there. But I've never seen the requirement to remove the buffers before, so that's kind of interesting. So let's see how that goes. So they do come out, thankfully. As I say, it's not something I've seen before, so that comes out as well. So it's kind of an interference fit there. So we'll now look to get the actual body off. This side. I should have him off pretty quickly now. There we go. And there we go. So let's just take a look at the two parts first. So we'll take a look at this guy. So if we're going to add a driver, we're going to need to remove this. Looks very loose, so that should come out the seating area. Should be pretty easy to remove from what just looking at it here. Little clips, so let's just take that out. There we go. So that's your cab area. Pretty basic. We'll put a driver in, so that's we'll do that later on. Now let's look at the main lower part of the model. So there isn't a massive ballast weight or anything in here. The main weight is actually the drive bogie. So that's just wired up for, as we can see there. It's a single bogie drive. I'm not sure whether it's all 6 wheels or not. There's a dreaded traction tire there and there. Now we'll see how they fare. Now, last model I had pretty good traction tires. They didn't leave a lot of deposits, but I don't tend to like them because of that. They do affect the running performance in general. Now these one looks to be pretty low profile, because the other thing that there's a bit of a splatter there now, so there's a bit of I might need to clean that. I might need to clean these wheels before I start running it. It does appear to have all wheel pickup, so I can see contacts on all the wheels, so that's good. And I'm not sure how many of these wheels are drive wheels. Yeah, that's not a drive wheel. So there's only 4 drive wheels, and 2 of them have got traction tires on them. So it's always kind of a bit of an issue. We've got our decoder socket here, and we've got absolutely acres of space to add a decoder and a speaker. So that's exactly what we'll do, and we'll see where we go from there. It does appear to kind of have a mounting for a speaker here in the middle area, kind of provision for it. Let's see what speakers I have. I probably won't be around one. Okay, so that's the inside of the body. I'll show you another picture once I get the DCC installed, so you can see what that looks like with my Soundtracks decoder. Okay, so now we've got the DCC decoder installed. This is the Soundtracks decoder with the converter board, connecting it into the 8-pin connector. So we're powering up the locomotive now. If you're not familiar with this decoder, it is quite a flexible decoder. Probably doesn't have the very best sample files out there, but it does allow you to emulate up to 5 different prime movers for diesel locomotives, which makes it very flexible for things like this when I'm testing different locomotives. You heard some of the whistle sound there for startup. Can configure things like the number of doors closing, etc. It ran off at quite a speed there, so I'm going to have to adjust the acceleration CVs for this, which you typically have to do to tune it to a particular motor. And we're a bit more controlled on the way back. So everything seems to be in order here, so I think I'll just do a few tweaks to the CV settings and get this ready then for the running session. But all in all, everything seems to be working okay. Okay, now we're going to get into the close-up view. And I guess this is what the Railroad Plus is all about. It's about the visual aspect. That's how it's marketed. And I think it looks pretty good. As you can see here, it's a nice rendition of the livery. There's no separately added detail. Everything is molded, but molded to a good standard. On those bogies, it looks quite good. And I think the livery overall looks quite good. A little bit fuzzy in places, and there's a bit of loose paintwork in a few areas, a bit of overpainting, but overall it is good. And for a budget model, I don't really have too many complaints. This is pretty well adequate, certainly adequate for a model of this in this type of range. And again, you can see the nicely detailed bogies, albeit it's all molded, and they've obviously picked out some hand-painted parts as well. And all the handrails, etc., are all molded. But not a bad appearance by any means, and I think that's one of the strong points of this particular locomotive. And we'll now shift over to the 360 view just to give you a look. You'll get to see the front and back ends as well as a bit more of the roof. And again, it's all molded on the roof, and the fans are molded pretty well, pretty nicely. You've got the fixed buffers there, which, as we saw, you do have to remove when you're removing the body. But overall, again, it's an attractive looking locomotive. This is a nice livery, of course, but I think it's certainly rendered, if at the very least, adequately. I do like it, and I think in general it is pretty good. But get close on this livery, you will see some deficiencies. But again, that's not to be surprised. At this sort of distance and running around your layout, you're just not going to notice those issues. So I think it does hit the mark from that perspective. Okay, we're going to get into the running session now, and this is running under DCC with the Soundtracks decoder configured for a class 47. And you can see a little bit of jitteriness there at the start. You don't generally see that under a no load condition, but this is running with these high resistance Curo scale wagons, and they are a test for a lot of locomotives. I think in general, once it does pick up speed, it does handle them very well. And I think that's certainly something I was very pleased about. And the control linearity, which is basically, if you have 50% power on your controller, are you getting 50% speed? You are with this locomotive, and it's a pretty linear response in terms of the amount of power you applied relative to the speed that you're actually traveling at. And I don't find that even on some really expensive locomotives, that particularly this year I found a lot of the locomotives, Loxon 5 based locomotives, are not linear at all, and they've a limited range, and they don't allow you to even configure the range. So I was quite pleased with this, and it's certainly the best, I would say, railroad model I've ever experienced with under DCC control. So very pleased with it. And in general, the running session is fine, and it's good fun. And if you were to be running this with much lighter load wagons, say the ICA wagons from Dapol, for example, which are very light load on a locomotive, if you had 6 or 7 of those, I think you would see a better running performance of the model, because it wouldn't be under the same strain it's under with the HYAs, which are heavier wagons and also have a heavier level of resistance on them. But it's doing fine here. I did have to tune down the top speed, so it's tuned down to CV5 to 150, which is, it means there's plenty of headroom there from a speed perspective, but I wanted to be reasonably realistic here in the context of this particular running session. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with it, and we're coming to a stop now. It didn't stall under the slow crawl type conditions here. While there may be a bit of jerkiness, I didn't get any stalling, and I think that's pretty good for considering the limitations of this model. Obviously, the all-wheel pickup is helping there, but it is really, really light, so it doesn't have that force going down on the track to give you the positive contact that you would get on a heavier locomotive. So all credit, it does run pretty well for what it is. Okay, let's get into the summary. So we've been looking at the Hornby Railroad Plus Class 47, and there is a range of liveries in the 2022 range from Hornby, and specifically the review model has been the R30045, which is the colourless freight livery version. The question over whether it has a 3-pole motor, this is what is indicated on the Hornby website for a couple of the Class 47s for this year. However, the majority of the Class 47s that are classified as Railroad Plus actually are showing as having 5-pole motors. I have put a question into Hornby about a week ago, but I haven't got a response yet. And maybe they don't want to respond for one reason or another, because maybe there's differences within this range that they don't want to highlight. Don't have an answer to this one. If somebody does have a specific answer, then please let me know in the comments. Would appreciate that. And if I do get a response from Hornby, I certainly will stick that into the description. It does come with all-wheel pickup, as we saw, 2-axle drive, and there's traction tires on there. 8-pin DCC ready out of the box, and there is an R8103 TTS sound option. I say available, but it's not available right now. Has been in the past and maybe in the future. So if you can't get hold of that, then that's a cheap sound option for you. I was running with a 21-pin Soundtracks decoder with an adapter, and not a very good adapter, I might say, to connect it into the 8-pin socket. That's what I was running with here. So that's another option, and that does seem to give a good running performance, that's for sure, whatever about the sound. Minimum radius 2 curves is what it's specified for, and it did run okay for me on radius 1 as well. So if you just have a very tight circuit on your layout, then I think you'll probably get away with this on a radius 1. Extra features, the added detail, that's about it. And that's only relative to the other railroad models. There really are no extra features on this. It doesn't have any features, which is a little bit unfortunate. I think some basic directional forward lighting would have made a huge difference actually to this model. It doesn't even need to have rear lighting, just have forward directional lighting. That would be fine. The top scale speed that I measured, and this is with the CV5 equal to 150, 78 miles per hour scale speed at 180 milliamps, 100% power, and that's with the 6 Secure Scale HYA wagons. So that's not a bad speed. The on-box weight is a really light 238 grams, and again, I really think they could have done with adding some ballast weight into this particular model. I did do a review of a Class 66, which is not classified as a railroad model, but I would classify it pretty well the equivalent of this. And now that did have extra ballast weight to bring it up to 400 grams. That model has no more features than this particular one does, and I think this particular model has a better livery. So I think this certainly could have done with a bit of extra weight, and it might be something you want to do if you do purchase one of these models, is to add some extra weight into the model. The selling price is anywhere between $79.95 all the way up to $96.99, which is the RRP, and that's as of September 2022. So let's get into the scoring. So I'm giving the running performance a 6.5. I think for a model in the railroad range, it's pretty good. And as I mentioned, it's probably one of the best, if not the best, performing railroad diesel that I've tested. Now, I haven't been testing a lot of railroad diesels over the last couple of years because I was so disappointed with some of the original ones that I purchased, and they didn't last very long in my possession. There was a number of them which I never even reviewed formally because I just literally I got rid of them as soon as I purchased them. I wasn't even going to do a review of them because they were so bad. This is not like that, and I kind of enjoyed running this particular model. And it's a bit stressed with the Accurascale HYAs, but with lighter rolling stock, I think you can have some good fun with this particular model. And I think from a running performance perspective, particularly under DCC, it was very good for a railroad model with traction tires. Its performance under DCC was really good for such a model. So 6.5, that's a good 6.5. And, I'm kind of debating whether it's a full 7, but probably isn't quite. The appearance and detail, I'm giving a 7 out of 10. I think the livery is good. I think visually this model does look good on your layout. And when you're looking at it from any sort of distance, you can't really tell the fact that everything is molded. You can't see any of the imperfections in the paint work. And in general, the livery is well applied. So you kind of get away with it, to be honest. And I think for some people, if all you really want is the livery and a good rendition of it, then this is not a bad model for that. Extras and variants, I'm afraid there's no extras, but you do have plenty of variants, and there's more coming as part of the 2022 range, which is good because you do get liveries for the Class 47, similar to the 66 from Hornby, that you wouldn't get anywhere else. So I think that for some people may be appealing to get, your favorite livery mightn't be available from the main vendors, so you might actually resort to getting one of these models because it has the livery you're looking for. So extras and variants, unfortunately, is only 5 out of 10. The build quality and packaging, 8 out of 10. I mean, for what it is, it's a very simple build, so there's not an awful lot to go wrong here. There's no separately fitted parts that are going to fall off or anything like that. The packaging is certainly adequate for a model of this weight and size. Again, it doesn't need a lot of protection either. So 8 out of 10 I think is fine, and I don't have any issues with it. Price value at the £85 mark, which is less than the RRP, that is a discounted price, I put as 7 out of 10. And I think in general you need to be looking to purchase this at a discounted price. Its full RRP of effectively £97 is not good value, and this would probably score something like a 5 out of 10 if I was to score that. So overall I'm giving it a 6.8 out of 10, which is not a bad score for a model like this, a railroad model. And so we get to our final recommendation. The first thing to say is that the running performance of this model is as good as any and better than most of the railroad diesels I've had experience with. The running resistance of the Accurascale HYAs doesn't do it any favours, as you'll have seen in the running session, but even with these, it put in a brave showing despite its ridiculously low weight. Its responsiveness under DCC was flawless, and its control linearity much better than most much more expensive Locksound 5 control locos I've tested this year. I suspect the Soundtrax decoder I used was a positive contributor here. The plus level of added detail is okay, but not enough to justify the branding and the cost. Hornby are missing a trick in not having at least some basic lighting and some added weight to make this more of a plus model than it really is. I would also have preferred smaller couplers, as well as proper scale seats in the cab that a driver could actually fit onto. All things considered, this is not a bad model, and I'm a firm believer that there is a place in the modelling world for locomotives like this, but they need to be hitting a lower cost point. I would recommend it for budget modelers if you can get it at a discounted price. More serious modelers will be disappointed with this model on multiple fronts, so unless you're absolutely in need of the livery and are prepared to live with or address some of the deficiencies, then it's probably better to wait for a more expensive version of this livery Class 47 from another vendor. So what are your thoughts on the Hornby Plus Class 47 range? If you own one of these models, how have you found it? We'll welcome feedback as always in the comments, please. So thanks for joining today's review. Please hit a like if you found it of use, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. In the meantime, take care and happy modelling.